All right. Thanks for coming to our solar contractor admin meeting. Um, we will go through, the normal housekeeping, safety moment, some announcements, and gonna switch things up a little bit today. We have a guest speaker. We have Chris from Demand Response, and he's going to talk about some of their programs that may pertain to you. And next year, looking forward for demand response programs. So feel free to drop in questions in the chat, and we will help, facilitate those conversations. As always, please make sure your mic is muted. Drop those questions in the chat, and feel free to come off mute if you need to, clarify any questions that you have in the chat. Make sure that you're filling out that attendance poll. It was just resent by Athena as well. If you have any issues accessing it, just let us know. All right, so for current project wait times, applications and LOIs taking about 1 to 2 weeks, DGPA reviews 1 to 2 weeks, and then final rebate documentation review about 3 weeks. Inspections are 1 to 2 weeks, and then shutdowns. It's going to depend on the location. Something that we wanted to call out: Austin Energy's offices are going to be closed December 24th, so Christmas Eve and Christmas, and then January 1st, so New Year's. That might delay some of the wait times and communications, but we will try to get those questions and applications answered and processed when we can. And then Tim, if you want to come off mute, I saw your hand raised.
Yeah, I just wanted to talk about the shutdown wait times a little bit. So, as we're nearing the final stages of the residential incentive, we have been making extra slots for shutdowns for residential solar specifically. I think there are still a couple available. So if you have a project that you're trying to get across the finish line and you're ready for a shutdown, you can call them and have, even if you're on the schedule for later, you can call them and have that shutdown moved up. So just know that we've made a bunch of extra slots, and they've mostly been filled up till now, and we're really towards the end of potential to get this, to get your project final inspected by the end of the year. Not that that's necessarily the cutoff for the tax incentive, but just to say, push your projects forward and get them done if you can. So that's all.
Yeah, that's a good call.
And then also, let me say one more thing, that to facilitate this, we've been working pretty diligently with the meter shop and ADS, so Austin Development Services. And we're not planning to stop at the end of December. We're going to keep working on this and try to get to a service level that is much better than 2 months. So we're going to try to target 2 weeks and make some changes so that we don't have these long wait times for shutdowns as we move forward. It's going to take a little time to put the things in place that we need to get to that level, but we have pretty solid commitments to do that.
Thanks, Tim. I'm sure everyone's happy to hear that. All right, and then attendance. Feel free to drop in the chat if you do not see the attendance poll. Upcoming meetings, we have our general meeting in January. For all participating contractors to attend those meetings, we'll have program updates and program metrics provided during those meetings. We we highly suggest that all participating contractors attend the general meeting in January. Then we have our next technical in February 19th, and then back to our administrative in March. We have a residential solar standard offers stakeholder meeting. That's going to be 6th of the series on January 28th. Please reach out if you do want the link to that or location to the stakeholder meeting. It's on our calendar. It should be on our calendar now, linked right here, but we are happy to send you that link as well. And then a little holiday safety moment, fire and electrical hazards during the holidays. Make sure that all decoration with lights are used safely. Check frayed wires, don't overload outlets, and then keep flammable items away from heat sources. Make sure you're blowing out your candles before leaving the room or sleeping, and consider battery operated ones. Make sure your trees are watered to prevent them from becoming, a kindling hazard, and keep them away from heat sources. And make sure you turn off your space heaters when you're not using them, and then just be aware of local and state firework laws. All right, some announcements. We're going to talk about online trainings, expedited shutdowns and inspections, solar RFP, and commercial programs and ECP enrollment reminders. All right, I know we've announced this a few times now, but because we are reformatting our admin meetings, we are hoping that all of our contractors can take advantage of our online solar contractor trainings. The link is here for those trainings. You'll have to create an account, and that course catalog should pop up for you guys. If you need help with ECP enrollment instructions, design and permitting requirements, inspection instructions, that's all there. Our normal trainings that we do during these meetings are located in these courses in presentation form. So you can click through at your own pace and learn more about that. If any employees at your company need to learn how to process ECP enrollments, we suggest you use this resource. And if they do need access to ECP, they need a new login, we will need the FACTA and required program documents. We need those course certifications to get them enrolled, or ECP login activated. So feel free to contact solar@austinenergy.com if you have questions, or you need a new ECP login. And the slide deck will be sent out, so you'll have access to that link as well. All right, expedited shutdowns and inspections. Tim touched on this briefly, but like he said, we're trying to close as many residential projects by the end of the year. We've increased the number of solar-related outages scheduled per day and added additional outage appointments, overall. We're also, we hope that you guys take advantage of the appointments. This is the number up here to call St. Elmo and coordinate with them for any needed appointments. And please note the tips for having a successful outage appointment. All right, I'm going to hand this one over to Tim.
Thanks, Ruby. So just for everybody's information, in case you happen to have missed it, and hopefully you didn't, but the city of Austin is planning to look at solar on all of our city facilities. So we do have an RFQ that's out there. I can't give any details here. It's all in the information at the RFQ. So go out and look for that if you haven't already. This a big project. It's probably upwards of, somewhere around or above 25 megawatts. So it's a big endeavor from the city. And I encourage y'all to look at that and see if you are interested in that or look to partner up on that or whatever. But just know that it's out there and do your due diligence and have a look at it.
Thank you. All right, commercial incentive program capacity, just touching base on our current capacity. Standard offers at 56%, commercial CBI is at 26%, commercial PBI tier 2 is at 43%. Just as a reminder, projects that do not have a contract and approved DGPA will not be approved, and LOIs or LOAs will be granted once all documents are reviewed. And, you do need a LOA or LOI. So ECP approval before installing. If a project increases in size after the LOI, the rebate amount will not increase. And then just a quick reminder about ECP enrollments for the RESI rebate program. As we're nearing the end of the year, I know there's been kind of a push to get those rebate applications processed and payments sent out. Just to, any delays you might see, we want to make sure we're avoiding those, especially if they're, low-hanging fruit, easy fixes in ECP. Make sure that if you do have any corrections made and those are completed, that you're moving the on-hold reason code to requested updates completed. This moves the project in ECP back into our review. If it's not changed, then we will not see it in our queue. So if you have application corrections needed, then make sure once that's complete, you change the reason code. And then same thing for post-inspection. Make sure you're completing the ECP corrections after inspection. We'll have some more information on the next slide, but other like low-hanging fruit for ECP apps, making sure that the reference number is matching the quiz confirmation number. Make sure that the applicant's information matches the CAF. All of those small errors can result in an application LOI delay. And with the holiday closures, we just want to make sure that we're avoiding any of those easy mistakes. And then for the post-inspection correction workflow, if a correction is requested post-inspection, the contractor will have to complete the correction workflow step. And then once that is completed and all as installed documents are uploaded and approved, once that step is closed out or, marked as completed in ECP, Austin Energy will then review it as a reinspection workflow step. Then it will go to QA review. So just make sure that you are providing those updates within 10 days. And if you're unable to close the step or you have any questions, just email solar@austinenergy.com. All right, any questions before we move on? And just as a reminder, since we're not going to go through ECP enrollment instructions, feel free to request the online training link, and all of those trainings will be online for you to access at any time.
I have a question.
Yep.
You had mentioned, Tim mentioned trying to reduce the timeline for the shutdowns from 2 months down to something shorter. And if you go back a slide or two, it talked about the timeline from application to LOI, which if you add up all those weeks, it's something like 6 weeks. Did I get that right?
Are you talking about currently?
Whatever you showed on the slide there. If that's current, then yeah, you go back one more slide. Or I guess one more than this. Where's the LOI timelines? Maybe it's before this. I guess it's
Yeah, so it's going to depend on the program. And with metering and shutdown times, that's also going to change. We don't have a specific timeline for all program enrollment processing, but in the first slide, which was just like overall wait times, it's definitely just going to depend on the type of program. I would say from application to LOI for a residential rebate application, it's about 1 week. But with commercial projects, it's some additional reviews are required, so that might take a little bit longer.
What's your question, David?
Well, I thought it said 6 weeks total. I'm just confirming that that's what I understood. And secondly, you mentioned Tim potentially reducing the other time, so I was just wondering if that could get shorter also.
The LOI, like the time to LOI.
Right, because the last slide that you showed.
Can you
said-
go to the slide that shows the wait times, Ruby, please?
Yes, here you go. So if it's 2
LOI 1 to
plus
2
3,
weeks.
right, and if you do the long duration one, it's 4 plus 3, which is 7 weeks.
Yep.
And we're not
Yeah,
supposed
some
to
of these
start
things
construction
can
until the
happen.
seventh week, until the final rebate documentation is done. That's what I'm just asking.
Oh, David, these weeks aren't necessarily additive. Like a DGPA can happen concurrently with getting an LOI. And you're referencing commercial projects, or are you interested in residential projects?
Yes, commercial projects.
Yeah, so these things can happen concurrently. So it's not like these stack necessarily. Like you can.
Okay.
Mhm,
Thank you, Valerie.
absolutely.
Thanks for clarifying. All right. If there aren't any other questions, I am going to hand it over to Chris, and he's going to talk about, oh, it seems like actually there might be some questions. Feel free to come off mute.
Oh, hi. This is Tuan Pham with PowerFin, and I actually just posted in the chat that a lot of people, some folks may be familiar with this, but we're looking, we're able to finance and develop megawatt scale DG portfolios, and so about the City of Austin's RFP, we are looking for local installation partners, and so. If anybody on this call, installers are interested, then please do reach out to us. I posted my email address on there. So that's all. I just wanted to let everybody know that certainly we're looking for a lot of local support, to build this out.
All right, thank you. And any other questions before we move on? All right. Now I'm going to hand it over to Chris to talk about some demand response programs.
Great, thank you, Ruby. Let me see if I can take control here of the slide deck. I believe so. Yeah. Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Chris Fisher. I'm the program manager of our demand response programs. Here to talk a little bit about our programs and our upcoming battery program. Our programs are based on the somewhat recent resource generation plan that was passed, I believe, about a year ago. So with the goals in the program, we have a goal of reaching 78 megawatts of demand response reduction by 2027 and 270 megawatts by 2035. We've observed around 48 megawatts of DR capacity in 2024, so we're looking to significantly increase that over the years and in an attempt to meet our goals. So what is demand response? So demand response, it helps reduce electricity when demand is high or when there's congestion on the grid. It allows customers to participate in the reduction of energy usage during specific times that demand response is needed. And the utilities can then either directly adjust devices like thermostats or electric vehicle chargers, or indirectly through notifications to customers asking them to reduce energy usage during a specific time. And then the customers that participate generally will receive an incentive for their participation, either based on performance or just general participation in the program, and that can be sent to them in the form of a bill credit or a check. And of course, the benefit of demand response, it helps keep the power grid stable, and it helps keep energy costs lower. And I'll go into a little more details of that here in a second. Why demand response? So demand response is a solution. You can view it at the transmission level or the distribution level. At the transmission level, it helps reduce peak demand, helps lower ERCOT transmission charges, and then helps prevent congestion on the grid. And then at the distribution level, it helps, you can use it to help manage stress on the grid, improve the reliability, and help defer costly upgrades that may otherwise be required on the distribution system. So benefit to the customer or the participant, they receive an incentive for participating in demand response. And, they could also receive potential demand savings if they receive a demand line item on their bill, or energy savings if they're able to reduce their energy for during the duration of the demand response event. So the main benefit that Austin Energy utilizes our demand response resources is for the ERCOT transmission costs. So ERCOT is basically a nonprofit organization, and they pass on their costs associated with transmission maintenance, upgrades, new construction of transmission systems. They pass it all down to the utilities participating in the ERCOT market. And in order to pass those costs down, they've come up with the 4CP value. This is the 4 coincident peaks. Essentially, ERCOT is a summer peaking grid. So they look at June through September and pick out the highest 15-minute interval of each of those 4 summer months. and determine each utility's load share ratio. So essentially how much energy each utility is using within those 15-minute intervals throughout for, I guess, the peak 15-minute interval for each of the 4 months. And then they allocate the costs that they've accrued for that year for maintenance and transmission upgrades and allocate them to all the utilities using the 4 coincident peaks and the load share ratio that each utility has within those 15-minute intervals. Within I guess, the competitive market, those costs are passed down directly to the customer, where within the non-competitive market, like within Austin Energy, those are absorbed and then passed down through the rates that we provide. So if we're able to basically reduce Austin Energy's load share ratio within those 4 CP intervals, then we can essentially save save the cost that's passed down to Austin Energy and through the rate system down to the customer. I think right now Austin Energy stands around just under 4%, and I believe around 3.6, 3.7% of the ERCOT load is used by Austin Energy customers. And so, and we've continued to reduce that load share ratio directly through our demand response programs, but even indirectly through some of our other programs, like our energy efficiency programs, of course, our solar programs that we have, green building, those all contributed to helping lower that load share ratio and ultimately reducing the cost to the customer. So that's a significant benefit through deploying these demand response resources. We're also looking at the energy market. Within the wholesale market, Austin Energy has to buy and sell energy on the wholesale market. Even though we own a lot of the generation, we still have to sell it on the market and then buy it back. So if we can reduce the energy usage within our service territory during those high wholesale market price days or intervals, then we can ultimately reduce the impact that Austin Energy has and reduce the rates to our customers. And so we're looking at that as well as the correct time to call a demand response event, reduce our load. Let's see. Just talking a little about virtual power plants for a moment. So a virtual power plant is not necessarily a physical building or facility. It's basically a network of decentralized energy resources. You may have heard the term DERs or distributed energy resources. And so a virtual power plant is just kind of an aggregation of those resources. And that could include rooftop solar panels, community solar, and then a lot of demand response type technologies like home batteries, smart thermostats, electric vehicles and charging stations, and even hot water heater controllers. And so when they're connected and coordinated using a software that aggregates those together, they can act like a virtual power plant. Instead of one big power plant that generates electricity, a virtual power plant uses all these smaller devices across the homes and commercial and industrial businesses to help balance the grid. These devices, they can produce energy, they can store energy, or they can reduce the electricity usage at any one time. And when they act together, they can kind of act as a flexible power plant, or what we would call a virtual power plant. So why do we need them? as more solar and wind power generation is added to the grid, the energy supply is a little less unpredictable. As far as the frequency on the grid, it's less controllable. You're not able to control that frequency on the grid. And so virtual power plants kind of help smooth out those fluctuations. We adjust the demand or we tap into stored energy to assist with that reliability on the grid. And so they're basically a cost-effective alternative to the costly building of new power plants or upgrading infrastructure, especially at the transmission level, but even at the distribution level. And so, well, I won't get ahead of myself here. We've got several demand response programs, and we're looking to add a battery program that will help kind of bring them all together in basically a virtual power plant. So today we work really closely with our energy market operations group at our Austin Energy. So they're constantly looking at the ERCOT market, looking at our both the ERCOT profiles and forecasts and our own Austin Energy loads within the market. They're in close communication with our generation plants, and they're buying and selling energy on the wholesale market. And so our demand response team works really closely with this group, to get insight from them on what they see on the forecasting, on what renewables are doing at any one time, looking at the forecasted load so that we can forecast what those what the potential 4CP or the peak 15-minute intervals could be, and then making a decision with them whether to call on our demand response programs to kind of help reduce that load. And, so we've been doing that for a number of years as demand response resources. And now that we're looking into the future at virtual power plants and DERs, and especially our upcoming DERM solution, it's becoming more and more essential, working across these work groups, we're kind of aggregating all these resources together and into a virtual power plant, and being able to deploy them as needed. Right now, it's somewhat manual inputs, I would say, based on communication with energy markets and what they're seeing in their forecasts. And I think in the future, as we create a DERMS program, that will be a little more seamless and more automated inputs into when and how these resources are deployed. Just a simple diagram of showing all the resources that a smart house could have potentially that can be considered with demand response or virtual power plant. Of course, the one thing missing here is solar, which is a very important resource on a virtual power point standpoint, but residential batteries, EV charging, smart thermostats. Our smart thermostat program has been around for a number of years. And then even energy efficient appliances, smart lighting has some, the newer models that are coming out having smart controllability and the ability to connect, or the utility connect to those devices to help reduce energy, reduce demand as needed. Yeah, I see a couple of great questions in the chat here that I will get to. I think I'll address them here in the next couple slides. But yeah, great questions. Keep them coming here. So I work on our demand response and technical services team, which is managed by Lindsay McDougall. Consists of our demand response program and our technical services program. Technical services is our engineers that help support DR and energy efficiency programs. We have a number of programs that we consider under the demand response portfolio. Got a number of slides here. I won't go into too much details here, but I want to at least give you a quick overview of each one. Our behavioral demand response program, completely voluntary program. There's no incentive tied to participation, but we do target around 50 to 55,000 residential customers. We ask them to reduce energy on certain days and specific time periods, and then provide metrics to them to show their energy usage and how much energy they're using. We have our commercial demand response program. These participants reduce load when called upon, either automatically through automated means if they have a specific device tied into their building automation system, or simply through manual control, and we'll send notifications to them either way and reduce their load, and then we're able to measure the impact of that demand reduction at the meter and provide an incentive based on their average demand that's reduced during the season, during the summer season. And then, of course, depending on their availability and whether they're reducing their load or curtailing manually or through automated device, they are paid an incentive, a different incentive levels at the end of the summer season. Another program this one is fairly new, is a Smart Home Rewards program. This is a pilot program funded through a Department of Energy grant. We're working really closely with our commercial energy efficiency rebates group, who is currently managing the program. It serves a couple of functions. One is I guess we'd call it a dual incentive option. So we're focused mostly on low and moderate income multifamily properties, and we provide a dual incentive. So an incentive both to the property owner and to the tenant. We come across some issues in demand response for participation in the program under these circumstances. Of course, the property owner owns the property and the devices that are installed there, but the tenant is the one that's impacted by any demand response event. So we're looking at this dual incentive and structure to incentivize both parties for participating in the program. And we do, at least for this program, and we're looking at others as well, David, for your question about pre-enrolled devices, we do utilize basically pre-enrolled devices, the thermostats at these properties, and hot water heater controllers at the property. It allows, a little less quote unquote paperwork or online enrollment from the customer to participate in the program. Helps us kind of maintain the devices and where they're located within the program. So yeah, at least for this program, and we're looking at others as well, we do have this kind of pre-enrolled devices option in the program. Another thing we're looking at with this program is the technology. So within these low and moderate income properties, some of the tenants may not have a Wi-Fi system that they can connect their smart thermostat to. So we utilize the hot water heater controllers, basically work like a mesh network, And if needed, we can add the smart thermostat to this mesh network so that we're able to control them. Gives the tenants ability to participate in our DR program. So we're able to control the devices remotely without the necessarily the need for the customer to have a Wi-Fi network at their residence for them to participate and earn an incentive. The thermostat within these properties basically fall within our Power Partner suite that I'll go into here shortly. And then the hot water heater controllers are controlled, scheduled, and controlled. They have very minimal impact. They have the ability to charge the system ahead of time in anticipation of an event. And for the most part, the customer is not even aware of when and how they're deployed. A lot of smart technologies in those, so they're aware of the customer's patterns, when they showered throughout the day and when hot water may be needed at the facility. So it kind of uses that in tangent with calling a DR event so that the customer really has no idea of when those are even curtailed, which, it's great for the program and great for the customer itself. Let's see, next are Power Partner thermostats and EVs. So this is primarily residential, but there is some commercial applications and EV fleets that are in the program. But basically targeting smart thermostats and electric vehicles and charging stations falls under an aggregator that we have, Energy Hub. We're able to deploy those resources as needed, and then participants of the Power Partner program receive an upfront program for enrolling in the program and then an ongoing incentive for continuing into the program. I'll go into a little more details, but this is basically the suite of programs that we will be rolling out our battery program under Energy Hub and under this aggregator. The last program is the RAS program, Resiliency as a Service. It's essentially a backup generator model, a specific model that incentivizes our large commercial customers and the generator manufacturer or vendor. And so basically the commercial can opt into the program or enroll into the program and receive through a lease agreement generation backup for their facility. Austin Energy incentivizes both the customer and the generator vendor, and then we're able to use these resources for offsetting load, for grid reliability, for emergency, potentially bidding into the ERCOT market for emergency response. And then the customer has backup generation as needed, and it somewhat helps with the cost of the lease of the generator. And then the customer does not have to invest heavily into buying, owning, and maintaining a generator at their facility. This is somewhat in its infancy, but we're in talks with several large commercial customers that will kind of loop into our resources, I guess, as a virtual power plant resource in the near future. So as I mentioned, batteries are kind of the next level DR virtual power plant. The kind of work we'll utilize these to test how the batteries and smart thermostats at residential customers can work together. as a demand response or virtual power plant resource. They kind of help each other. As a smart thermostat is called for demand response, we will raise the temperature of the thermostat a couple degrees. That will help cycle the HVAC system off for a longer period of time and reduce the demand impact on the grid. And then batteries can kind of help, potentially even ride out that demand response event even longer by supplementing that power as the thermostat may need to cycle back on before the event is over. Can utilize that stored energy instead of pulling from the grid. So it's a major what benefit that we'll be looking at as this program rolls out. So we're working with Energy Hub currently. I think I skipped it. Yeah, I did skip it. Energy Hub is the aggregator, as I mentioned, for our thermostat and our electric vehicles, and we're working with them now to integrate these residential batteries into the mix, into our suite of programs. So they're working currently with primarily Tesla, Solar Edge batteries, and then Franklin Whole Homes. So these three battery manufacturers are kind of our major target. I think they control the largest market segment of batteries in our service territory. We'll continue to add to this, but we're currently working with these three manufacturers today. Hopefully have this battery program off the ground by early February is the target date to have the systems integrated, so that especially the summer, but potentially even late winter, if we have the need for calling demand response events, we can call them through Energy Hub. That signal is passed on to the manufacturer and then down to the devices for deployment. And it kind of gets to the, as I mentioned, the next level, demand response, not only integrating the demand response resources together as a VPP, but also looping in solar and potentially other resources into the mix. Of course, battery and solar installations, and the combination of those is going to be heavily, we're going to see that heavily. I think most battery, if not all battery installations, are going to be paired with solar, are going to be added to existing solar systems. So the impact is going to be, that much greater. So yes, we will have an upfront incentive on the batteries. So it will be incentivized at $500 per battery system. And then we'll also provide an ongoing $75 per average KW of deployed capacity during the season. So we'll look at all the events that we deploy through a given year and average that kilowatt reduction, and we'll pay a $75 per average KW to each of the customers based on the performance, based on the availability of that system during a demand response event. Per year. So it's going to be probably primarily deployed through the summer season, but we are looking heavily, especially in the winter season, as needed to deploy them. It will be deployed less often, I think, during the winter, but potentially even could be called during the shoulder months in the fall and spring. But we'll look for the entire year, especially since this technology is not necessarily weather dependent like a thermostat. We can get more DR capacity during the summer. This, is based on availability. So we'll be looking at the entire year and the average KW of events call during the entire year. Yeah, so, I appreciate this time chatting with you all. I think this is just the beginning of some significant collaboration between demand response and the solar team within Austin Energy and you as contractors. And I think in the near future, even significantly more collaboration with a distribution system and other resources as well that will be looped into what can be called a distributed energy resources. So wanted to provide this information as a kind of an introduction to you all of demand response if you're not familiar with it, and kind of open some dialogue between the work groups and between you all as contractors and vendors with the city, and hopefully educate the customers about all of our programs and how they can work together, educate them with our other incentives and rebate programs, and kind of collaborate moving forward. How is the amount determined? It's currently a pilot program, so that amount could be adjusted. It's heavily influenced by the ERCOT postage stamp rate, which is the impact to the transmission costs. Postage stamp rate currently, I want to say, is close to around $69 per kW. And so, that's based on the transmission costs and per kW. And then the wholesale market energy costs as well has small impact on it that we're looking at as well, as to determine when to deploy demand response. I guess both fortunately and unfortunately, the past 2, maybe 3 years, we haven't really seen a lot of significantly high wholesale market pricing, which is good from I guess, a rates perspective and the impact on the rates. We're not having any significant high rate days or intervals that could impact rates, but at the same time, that's also less of a savings opportunity, at least from a demand response impact, opportunity to save at the wholesale market. So all of that kind of goes into influencing what that incentive is, and of course it could change the wholesale market pricing. In years past, was heavily impacted and did align with the 4CP pretty significantly. And I think over the last few years, we haven't seen as much of the higher wholesale market pricing during the 4CP intervals, which generally, somewhere around the 330 to 530 intervals. And we've seen a little bit of an impact, or the higher wholesale market prices during the solar ramp down. So the early evening hours, as renewables are falling offline, is when we see those the impact of the prices. But again, it hasn't been as significant as years past, as 4, 5, 6 years ago. But we'll continue to monitor that and adjust the incentive as needed based on the impacts of that. Yes, we are considering today I guess the model like Base Power uses. As of today, we haven't come to a conclusion. We're still looking at the impact of that. And this is, I'm assuming, this is more like a lease agreement of batteries to the customer. The biggest concern is the the benefit to the customer receiving those benefits and incentives. But we're still weighing the options currently. Tim, I see your hands up. Did you have a question or a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to chime in on that a little bit. So like our functionality through Energy Hub is somewhat limited. And so we're maximizing the functionality there. But in the meantime, we're also studying what different deployment strategies we can take to maximize the avoided cost to the utility and thus our customers. And then we'll look to pass those forward, as the program evolves with both, value and functionality. We'll look at things not just that provide avoided costs through market participation and alignment, but also we'll look at non-wires alternative approaches that could save cost, to the system where we would have normally needed to upgrade components of the distribution grid, and can defer those upgrades or even eliminate them through strategies and deployment of batteries. So, this is a long road. We're at the very beginning. We're kicking off a pilot with limited functionality, but we're moving towards a space where we'll have higher functionality and better schemes, like deployment schemes, to then maximize the avoided cost benefits.
Yeah, great points, Tim. Appreciate that. Yeah, we're still looking and open to a lot of changes could be in the works. Our COD and the PUC is currently looking at restructuring how the transmission costs are allocated, and that's probably at least 2, 3, 4 years out. But not all these things influence the programs, how the incentives are structured, how deployment is handled, the kind of when and why and how they're deployed. So, any of this could be adjusted in the near future. Yeah, I see. David, you've got your hand up.
Thank you. I know we're just about out of time, but I just remembered is there an update on third-party ownership since the model is changing at the federal level? I think there was supposed to be a meeting yesterday, but I tried to log in and didn't get success there.
Yeah,
Are you talking
I
about
guess
leasing, David?
Right. Yeah. The leasing so
Yeah.
that someone can still take advantage of the tax credits, which I think is currently not allowed in our territory.
It's not incentivized. So the short answer is yes, we're looking at leasing. And to kind of dive into that just a tiny bit, with leasing, the ownership of that system is with a third-party commercial customer, so they can leverage the commercial tax credits as well as accelerated depreciation and tax benefits. So, and then potentially they pass that forward to the customer. Now, that said, the leasing agreements that we've seen are pretty complicated, and they have a lot of things that could be concerning. We know that at minimum, customers will need some education on, what to look out for in leases. We are looking at trying to develop a program where we can help to govern leases a little bit and ensure that they're not running afoul of the law, which, prohibits other entities from selling energy to our customers. Um, and just some other basic things that we could maybe put some guidelines around leases and try to figure out how to implement a program around that. But, you know, that I would say at this point, we're realizing that it's very, very complicated. And leases can have, they're not necessarily just a, you know, straightforward 5-page solar lease. They're more typically a 50-page lease that has a lot of stuff in them. So, you know, we're looking at a bunch of different lease models and from lease providers, providing feedback, and, you know, trying to get to a place where we can enable leases, but we are not there yet. So, you know, more to come on that. We're looking to, you know, have a lot of this resolved by spring or early spring. So look forward to stakeholder meetings around leases coming up here. But just know that this is a very complicated subject. We are on it. We're working with legal, and we have good intentions here. But this is the landscape is complicated. Let's put it that way. So more to come on that.
Thanks, Tim, and thanks for that question, David. Is there any other questions or discussions? I saw there was a request for the slide deck. Yeah, that was hoping y'all get a copy of the deck that has, I didn't go into a whole lot of details about each program. There's more in the slide deck that hopefully y'all can learn from. So definitely will receive the slide deck for that, but happy to chat offline with anyone if anybody has anything, any questions or comments, kind of continue future collaboration with you all.
Let's
Yeah,
take
David,
one more
did you have-
question, then we have to wrap up.
Okay, what is the easiest way to talk with the city facility owners to help with this RFP process? Like, is there a way, some database somewhere where we know who the decision maker is at any one of the buildings so we can understand if they're open to this dialogue?
We can't answer questions like that.
Yeah.
You know, this is a competitive solicitation. All the information is within the solicitation, and that's all we can do. We are not allowed to answer any specific questions because that could, you know, unintentionally give someone an advantage over someone else that might not be in attendance to this meeting. So my suggestion is go read the RFP. The information's in there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Well, thanks everyone for your attendance and participation today. Thanks, Chris, for the presentation. And we will catch you next month.
Thank you, guys. Chris,
thank you all.
Is there a email that you want to drop in the chat if people want to get in contact with the demand response team?
Yes, I will do that. Definitely.
Perfect.
Yeah, happy to answer any questions or yeah, open some dialogue there. I will add an email to the chat for you all.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Chris.
Yeah. Thank
Appreciate
you.
presenting
Thanks,
all these
everyone.
programs. Just to wrap things up, I am going to send out the slide deck. The links in the slide deck, like the RFP link, online trainings, any other links that you see listed here are going to be accessible once you have this deck. And as always, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to the Solar at inbox, and we're happy to help. All right. Well, thanks for joining, you guys. Please let us know if you need the attendance poll sent again before leaving the meeting. We're happy to resend it. And happy holidays to everyone.